Livonia. My name is Rob Brzezicki, and this is Livonia On Air. Today we are sitting with our city clerk, Lori Miller. We're going to discuss some of the work we're doing leading up to this year's election in 2024. Lori, great to have you here.
Thank you, Rob. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
So, elections are always exciting. We're all tired of seeing the mailers in the mail. We're tired of seeing the signs on the street. We're tired of the news being completely filled with this. So I think we're all, as residents, very excited about the election being over. But this is when you and your team go into overdrive because the election's not over until you say it is.
Well, that's partially true, but it's really not over till everything's canvassed by the county. So it's a process for sure. We're very busy. We're working a lot of hours to prepare for the election and to prepare for early voting and everything that comes after the polls close. So that's when the fun really begins for us.
I'm sure the fun is 365 days a year. But we've heard a lot leading up into this election that we've got all kinds of new laws, new rules, new regulations in place. What have you and your team been doing to prepare for these new restrictions on elections?
There are actually more voter rights. So we have been preparing all year long. We have been out in the community trying to get our youth registered to vote. We have provided our voters with a little voting guide. It looks similar to this, which outlines all of their new rights. It's good throughout the state of Michigan, so it's not just unique to Livonia. And we wanted to get information to our voters so that they're educated and they know that they have far more options for this election, more so than ever before.
So what are some of those new rights that we have, those new avenues to go and vote?
Right. The very first one that is foremost in my mind is early voting. So that began earlier this year. It was rolled out with the presidential primary. So each community gets to pick how they want to facilitate the early voting, but under the laws, we are mandated to have 9 days, minimum of 8 hours each day. You can have one site, you can have multiple sites. So Livonia had to come up with a game plan last September before I even took office. So the plan was to have one voting location. So that is what we have done throughout the year for our early voting. It's at one site, so no matter where you vote, you get to go to one location. And ours is at the housing office, which is just south of here on Farmington Road.
Okay, so it doesn't matter what precinct I would normally vote in, what school I would go to, regardless of where I live in the city. My early voting site is just one place, and that's over at Farmington and Plymouth Road, right?
That is correct, yes. And it's open for 9 days. Like I said, we went with the 9 days because we're not sure how this would take off this year. This was kind of a trial run. In February, we had over 500 residents who voted early. And then in August, over 450. So we do expect this November a lot of voter participation. And it's different in the sense that it's a real live voting precinct. You get to go in, you fill out your application, you show your voter ID, you are given a ballot, you can then sit down and vote your ballot, and then you get to run it through a tabulator. So you truly are voting early. You get that sensation just like you would be receiving at a precinct.
That's interesting. So that's probably a little bit different than what I'm seeing on the main floor, the entryway lobby of City Hall. It seems to me that people are sitting there and they've got little placards around them for their privacy so that they can vote. I was under the impression that was early voting. Is that not early voting?
That is not early voting. So at this time, what we are doing in our office at City Hall is issuing absentee ballots. So if someone wants to vote absentee, they come in, they complete their application, again, show us photo ID, we give them an absentee ballot. And so we do encourage them to sit down and vote it while they're there, but they also get the option of taking the ballot home. They can vote it at their leisure. It's just due back by the close of polls on Election Day. The difference is it's deposited into a ballot drop box and it's not run through a tabulator. So absentee does not give you the same feeling that you would get in a precinct. You do not get to send it through a machine.
Do I get a sticker for my
You
lapel
do
that
get a
says I voted?
sticker.
Well, as long as I get a
Yes,
sticker, I feel
lots
like
of
I voted.
stickers,
I think that's the
yes.
most important thing a lot of times.
Some people like to run it through the tabulator. So that's the benefit of the early
And that
voting.
I can definitely understand, but it's nice to know because there's a ballot drop box right there in the lobby of City Hall too. So I could, presumably, I could go to the clerk's office today, ask for my absentee ballot, I'd, present the information I need to present, and fill out my ballot and be done, just placing it into that ballot box. Or I could take that home and research who I wanted to research and figure out what I wanted to do there, and just mail it in as I wanted to, or come back and drop it in a box as well.
Exactly. And one other part of the new laws that changed with the absentee ballots is you now have the option of taking your voted absentee ballot to the early voting site where you can run it through the machine and have it tabulated there, or you can take your absentee ballot on election day to your voting precinct. So there are all kinds of options for voters depending on what they want to do with their ballot.
It seems like we've got every which way to be able to not just vote in a timeline that makes sense for us, but it gives folks some time to research the candidates that they're going to be voting for. I can't tell you how many times over the years that I've gotten to the polls knowing full well that I'm going to vote for 90% of the people on that ballot, and then get to some obscure judge's race or a trustee race that I have no idea about. And it's a bit heartbreaking for me, but I don't like to vote for people who I don't know what they stand for. So it's great to know that I could get that prep beforehand, have some time to research these candidates and figure out, so I can really hit 100% and know that every one of my votes was exactly what I wanted and I didn't miss out on any opportunities.
Exactly, and that's why the voters' rights have been expanded. And the beauty of that also is you have proposals, you have other things on your ballot. It's a front and back side ballot, so please remember to flip your ballot over and vote the back side. There's a lot of information on there, and some people do want to take it home and digest it and research it before they cast their ballot. Certain people still want to run it through a tabulator, so now you get that opportunity to do that this year.
Sure, absolutely. I'm still going to hide who I vote for from my wife. That's one of the things I'll do.
Not a problem.
So we've also got same-day registration. Can you tell us a little bit about same-day registration?
Sure. That was part of the same proposal that was adopted in 2018, which means you have the right to come into City Hall. You have to go to City Hall and register up to vote at the clerk's office up to and including the close of polls on Election Day. So that gives a brand new voter more opportunity. It used to be in the past you had to register 30 days, 2 weeks before. Now it's in person up through Election Day. So a new voter can come in even on Election Day, register to vote, and get their ballot. They can get it there at our clerk's office where they can vote it and deposit it into that ballot drop box, or they can then go to their precinct and vote. So again, it gives voters more flexibility and more time to get ready for the election as far as showing up in person.
It's great. I think it's a good reason to remind all of our family and our friends that it's never too late to vote until literally the last minute when the polls close. That well, there is a time in the day that it is too late to vote.
There is a time in the day.
But we're spreading that option open for folks, especially
exactly.
who may find out some new information at the last minute or
right.
really get excited about a candidate just leading right up into that election.
Exactly. Yes, it's all about making it easier for our voters.
Sure, absolutely. So is there additional training that your staff has had to deal with? Is there anything in particular that you've had to teach your team? You've been with the clerk's office for how many years now?
I began in the clerk's office in 2007.
Okay.
So this is my 17th year with the city of Livonia.
So for the folks who either haven't been there as long or those who have done it one way for so many years, what kinds of new training have you needed to put in place to get them ready for this year?
Well, we've been partnered with the Bureau of Elections, who has offered us on-site training. We've gone to Lansing for training. We trained all of our precinct inspectors this year, and so one of the highlights was about the voters' new rights and then also focusing on customer service. It will be a huge voter turnout in November, and we want everyone to have a pleasant experience.
I've noticed, at least in the last few cycles, that there are fewer and fewer people at my polling place. and it's easier to get through the lines, which is great. Now, do we think that's because more people are choosing to vote absentee or vote early?
I do believe so, yeah. Absentee ballots are continuing to climb in numbers, but also the early voting gives you another second avenue to vote before Election Day. So those two factors together is helping us alleviate long lines on Election Day at our precincts. This is a huge year, though. We really don't know what to expect because voter turnout is expected to be quite high. So there may be lines only at certain times of the day, but everything that we can do to prepare for that has been put in place.
Thanks, Lori. So we've got a lot of questions that we see through social media. We get at City Hall via email. And I'm just going to try and hit you with as many of these questions as possible because I know that some of our listeners may be a bit confused on some of these aspects or may just have some questions. So first, can you explain to me what a spoiled ballot is?
Sure. A spoiled ballot is when a voter casts it and has changed their mind, or they marked the wrong thing, and for some reason they want to invalidate that ballot and get a new one. So there are two separate rules for the spoiled ballot. If they have already returned their ballot to City Hall and we have received it, they can spoil it up until this Friday, which is October 25th. If they were sent a ballot and never received it and have not voted it and returned it to City Hall, they have until Friday, November 1st to spoil that ballot. And that just allows them the opportunity to get a new ballot.
So, people make mistakes, but we have opportunities there to
correct.
resolve those mistakes and do it in a safe way that we know that, everybody gets one vote.
Right, exactly.
That's great to know. So another question we get a lot, and I'm sure you've heard it a number of times, and that's the type of writing implement we're using to fill in the bubbles. We've heard Sharpies are good, Sharpies are bad. We've heard ballpoint pens are good, ballpoint pens are bad. Can you let us know where this comes from, or at least what the final answer is to the issue?
Absolutely, yes. When you're voting absentee, the best writing utensil would be a pen. And the reason is the pen has time to dry because it's being mailed back or returned to our office. So it's sitting for a while and not being run through a machine. When you are voting live, whether it's at the early voting site or at our precincts, the preferred tool is a Sharpie marker. You can also use a flare marker. The reason is because that ink needs to dry from the time you color in your bubble and take it and tabulate it through the machine. The machine is a high-speed scanner, so it's truly taking your ballot, flipping it around inside, and taking an image of that. If the ink is wet, it will smear and it'll invalidate your ballot. So there is a right tool for where you're voting it.
But don't we worry about, I know when I'm writing with a Sharpie, I know I always have to have something underneath it because I don't, my wife's going to yell at me when the Sharpie goes through and it puts marks on the countertop. So what is it that we have in place to make sure that we're not, that the other side of that ballot isn't getting affected?
That's a good question because this year it is a two-sided ballot. So when you are marking your ballot on the front side, whatever bleeds through to the opposite side of the paper is set up so by printing and our graphic designers so that the ovals are not lined up to bleed through to the other side. So whatever does bleed through is not going to invalidate anything you color in on the back side of your ballot.
That's really good to know. That's good to know. So we also, I see them all over town, and I see them in City Hall. We've got ballot boxes. They're red, white, and blue. They're pretty. They're newer than our mailboxes locally. What are these? What can they be used for? How do we keep them secure?
That's one of the new laws that rolled out this year. By election law, we're required to have them throughout the community based on our population. So because we have a large population, we have 6 throughout the city, equally spread out so that residents have an equal opportunity to get to a ballot box to drop off their returned voted ballot. Those are all placed on city property. They all have cameras on them with 24/7 surveillance. So all of that data is kept indefinitely. It's all uploaded into the cloud, and if we need to look at something that may or may not have happened at a ballot drop box, we have that capability.
It's good to know. It's good to know. Another question we get a lot, people who don't have picture ID or the need for picture ID when we're voting, what are the rules around that? Because you hear it's obviously different from state to state. What is it in Michigan?
In Michigan, you are required to show a voter or a photo ID, when you're voting. If you go to your polling location and you do not have your driver's license or state ID with you with the photo, you are allowed to fill out what we call an affidavit, and you're signing a form stating that you are who you say you are and you do reside at that address and you are a registered voter. That is then kept in the permanent record of the files for the election, and you're still issued a ballot. So even if you don't have it with you, you just fill out the affidavit.
But the best way to do it is obviously, have your ID ready to go, but maybe even vote early to make sure that you've got everything in place, so you know early, rather than at the last minute realize you forgot your purse with your ID.
Exactly.
One thing that you mentioned about the ballot boxes is that they're all over the city. There's a good number of them. And that reminds me of the idea of access. We need to make sure everybody has access to their ability to vote. So I'm wondering about my friends, whether it be in the aging population where they have a little bit harder of a time moving around, folks in our community with disabilities, people that use a wheelchair, people that have another conveyance that helps them get around. What do we have in place for folks like that, and also for folks who can't see or can't see very well or can't hear very well?
There are many options. So Michigan has been very proactive in this, and we're trying to make sure that every voter gets the opportunity to vote. So there is what is called an accessible ballot, which is an email that is sent to a voter who is not able to get out of their home to vote, so that they can use whatever assistive devices they need to and vote from home. We also have at every voting precinct by building, I shouldn't say precinct, at every voting location we have what is called a voter assisted terminal. It looks a little unique because you can, it's usually sitting at a desk so that you have wheelchair access. It has remote controls like a paddle. It almost looks as if it was a gaming system. And it gives voters the ability to vote no matter what their limitation may be in the privacy, because of course we would put up a security to make sure that their ballot is cast in privacy. And then once the ballot is printed, it's a ballot marking device. That ballot is printed. They then can take it to the tabulator and feed it through the tabulator like every other voter. Those are available also at the early voting site. So there is one at the early voting site and one at every building that we use as a polling location.
And that's because we have a number of precincts. We have more precincts than we have polling locations.
Yes.
Anybody that votes regularly in the precinct would know. Sometimes you go in and the gymnasium or the multipurpose room is cut into 4 pieces and everything is clearly marked. So I guess the most important question is, how do I know what precinct I'm in? How do I know which of those polling locations I go to if I'm a new voter?
Right, you can always look up your voter information on the votelivonia.org page to find out where your precinct is at. You can also call the clerk's office, or you can look it up through the Secretary of State's website. So there's 3 different avenues to find out where you vote.
That's great. It seems like we've got it all on votelivonia.org. There's probably a lot of information. Is there anything else that people need to know before they they cast their vote at the polls this year?
Early voting is big, and we encourage all of our voters to take advantage of it. It will open Saturday, October 26th. It runs for 9 consecutive days, so it will close on November 3rd, which is a Sunday. The hours of operation are 9 to 5, so voters have 2 full weekends and Monday through Friday of next week to vote early, and we encourage voters to take advantage of that.
What if I end up working late on Election Day and I don't get to my polling place until 7:45, and I get there and oh my gosh, there's a long line. A lot of people had to work late that night. Do I have to be worried about what happens at 8 o'clock when those polls close?
No, absolutely not. So our workers in our precincts are trained. Everyone that is in line at 8 o'clock gets a ballot. So the poll workers would then go down the line and give everyone that is in line an application to help speed up the process so that when they get to the check-in table, they can show their ID and be issued a ballot. So if you are in line on election day before 8 o'clock, up until 8 o'clock, you will get a ballot.
All right, well, that is great to hear. I know I'm going to be voting live and in person at my polling place on Election Day. I love to go and do that and bring my kids along so they can watch me vote. What are the hours that people need to know that they're going to be able to access those polling locations on the big day?
So on Election Day, the polls open at 7 a.m. and they close at 8 p.m. In addition to that, though, our office has amped up our office hours. We have extended office hours this week and next week leading up to the election, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. We will be open Saturday, the 26th, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. We will be open the Saturday before the election from 7:30 to 3:30. So there are all kinds of hours and opportunities for you to take care of registration or absentee or whatever you need to before Election Day at the clerk's office.
So there's going to be people available to us, whether it be during the workday, even after the workday, on the weekend. We're going to have the wonderful folks in the clerk's office that are going to be able to answer our questions there. Or we can go to votelivonia.org and find a lot of that information probably right there at our fingertips.
Absolutely. Votelivonia.org has all kinds of information to help voters no matter when, where, or how they want to vote.
All right, well, thank you, Lori, for joining us. It is great to have somebody with your knowledge base let us know that not only is it easier to vote, but it's safer than ever for us to go out and vote this year. We want to make sure every vote counts and everybody who wants to vote is able to do so. And I want to thank you for listening today. This is our first attempt here at Livonia On Air. We hope to be coming back to you monthly with new topics. Some of those topics will be about things happening right in that month or the excitement happening during that period of time. Other times it'll just be other great topics of great things going on here in our lovely city. So until next time, from Livonia On Air, thank you and have a great day.